We're learning the second Sikha on Parshas Chukas, in Chelek, Chavches, on page 138. The shir today is being learned, L'Nishmas, Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin, ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. The Parsha Seinu, the Tzeil Teteira, the Parsha from the Chashan HaChoshes. In this week's Parsha, the Torah relates the story, in the section that's known as the story of the copper snake, Vayedaber ha'am b'Elokim u'v'Moshe Gomer. The Yidden spoke out against Hashem and against Moshe. Vayishlach Hashem ba'am es ha'nachashim Gomer, and Hashem sends snakes to attack the Yidden. Vayava ya'am el Moshe vayomru chatanu Gomer, and the people came to Moshe and confessed and said that we sinned. Hispalel el Hashem v'yasam aleinu es ha'nachash, daven to Hashem, and He should remove these snakes from us. Vayispal Moshe ba'ad ha'am. And Moshe immediately davens for the people. Stellt sich Rashi of the Werte, Vayispal Moshe, so Rashi quotes from the Pasuk the words Vayispal Moshe and is mefarish, and he explains. Mikan, from here we learn, L'mi shemevakshim mimeno mechila, that one that is being asked for forgiveness, shelo yehei achzari milimcha, that he should not be cruel and hold back forgiveness. Now the Yesh Garsim, there's another version in Rashi, achzari limcha, he should not be cruel in forgiveness. The meaning of this version of Rashi will be explained later in the Sikha. Der Makuf von dem Pirish is in Tanchome. The source of what Rashi says here is in Tanchome, and dort wird gesagt. And in Tanchome it says as follows. L'haidia an v'sanusa shel Moshe. This pasuk comes to teach Moshe Rabbeinu's humility. Shaloi nishtar levakesh aleim rachmim. He did not delay to beg mercy for Yidden that spoke out against him. But when Yidden came to ask for forgiveness, that he should daven to Hashem, he immediately davened for them. And also to let you know the power of tshuva. As soon as Yidden came and did tshuva and said we sinned, miyad nisratzalem, immediately Hashem forgave them. One that forgives should not be cruel. Similar, we could also learn out from the story that happens by Avraham, where the pasuk says, "Vayispal Avraham el ha'olikim, vayirpa ha'olikim es Avimelech v'ez Gomer." In the story by Avraham, when he came to Plishtim, and Avimelech took away Sarah, his wife, and then when Avimelech comes and gives back Avraham, his wife, so Avraham forgives him, davens for him, that Hashem should heal him. Und danach bringt noch a pasuk, v'steht bei Iyov. And then the Tanchum quotes another pasuk as a source for this idea in Iyov. So now the question is, that it's from here that we learn this point that when one is asked for forgiveness, he should forgive. When, as we see here, this could be learned from the pasuk earlier that it says by Avram that he, even though he was offended, he was hurt by Avimelech taking away his wife, but when he was returned, when his wife was returned, he immediately davened for Avimelech. This is mochach from Tanchuma, as it's clear from what Tanchuma says. Additionally, Oster limud von Avram is a Mishnah in Masechta Baba Kama. The source of this idea, being from the story by Avram, is a clear Mishnah in Masechta Baba Kama. As avapi shuhu noisan loy, that even if a person paid, when one caused an injury to his friend, even if he paid in full, all different modes of payment, 5 different modes of payment that is necessary, but nevertheless, he will not be forgiven for the pain and the suffering that he caused them in this embarrassment, until he asks for forgiveness. And the source the Mishnah brings is from what it says by Avram, that Hashem says to Avimelech, return his wife, and ask by Avram that he should forgive you. And from where do we learn that if one does not forgive, then he's cruel? Another version is, from where do we learn that one that is forgiving should not be cruel, but he should forgive? As it says there, that Avram did immediately daven for the sake of Avimelech, and Hashem forgave him. So it's difficult to understand. Rashi is mefarish b'pshuta shel mikra as das lernt man up mikan by Moshe. Why does Rashi say that we could only learn this from here? What happened by Moshe? Onit vi in the Mishnah as man learnt this up from Vayispal Avraham el Elokim. and not, as it says clearly in the Mishnah, that the source for this is what it says by Avram, that he davened for Avimelech. Nachmer, furthermore, in the Me'ore mit Avram is da noch aggressor chidish and oifen v'chiyav ha'mechila. By the incident with Avram, there's actually a greater point that we could learn from there regarding the extent and the obligation of forgiving. Sai mitzadem chomer achet. First, looking at the severity of the sin that happened here. As das was Sarah Ishtoi is zugenommen geworden. The base of Avimelech, the fact that Sarah, his wife, was captured and taken to the house of Avimelech is l'chayre aggressere pegia v'tzar wie das was dibru b'Moshe. It's a much greater sin and a much greater offense and pain than this the Yidden spoke out against Moshe. Und sai mitzad mechile v'silika einesh. And also looking at the level of forgiveness and to what extent a punishment for the sin was removed. Dorten steht, vayispal Avram goimer und teke from miyad vayir palikim goimer. By the story of Avram, it says Avram davens, and immediately Hashem heals Avimelech. Or b'Parshasenu isn't them given a Tanai. However, over here, when Moshe davens for Yidden, there's a condition. Asela chasara, the Yidden should prepare this snake, a copper snake, and v'hoya kol anoshach v'roise v'chayin, they put it on a pole, and whoever gets bitten should go and look up at that pole. That eine should sich nit abgetan take it from miyad. So Moshe davening for Yidden did not have the effect that the punishment, the snakes that were attacking them, should be immediately removed. So it's a much better source to learn this idea from what happens by Avram and Avimelech. So how does Rashi say that we can? Only from here could we learn this idea that when one is being asked for forgiveness, he should immediately forgive. It would seem that we could explain this as follows. As Leut Pshutisha Mikra, Learned Rashi is dafke b'Parshasenu an inyan from Bakashas Mechila. When you look into the simple reading of the pasuk, Rashi understands that it's only in our parsha that we see that there was forgiveness that was being asked. The Yidden haben gesagt, Chatonu ki dvarnu b'Hashem ubach hispal Hashem. So the Yidden came and said, we sinned, we spoke out against Hashem and against you, against Moshe. Daven to Hashem for us. So the Yidden are confessing and are asking for forgiveness. Mashenkim ba'Avimelech is not given kim bakashas mechila. But in the case of Avimelech, we don't find in the pasuk explicitly that he asked for forgiveness. Zain Zogin, this that he said, Ma asisa lono. He's speaking to Avram and he tells him, what have you done to us? What have I done to you that you brought on me and my kingdom such a great sin? Things that should not be done, you have done to me. What have you seen that you've done all this to me? So all these words, this is no content of someone that's asking for forgiveness. What you see here is that he's actually demanding of Avram. Why did you bring all of this calamity upon us? And Azayich is mashma bepashtus from pashtus haloshen b'teisefta. This is also what it seems from the words that it says in the Teisefta when it speaks about this. As dort is nit gewenken bakashus mechila. That by Avram, Avimelech never asked for forgiveness. Hachayvel v'chaveirei afal pisha loy bikish hachayvel min anechbal. When one injures his friend, even if the one that caused this injury does not ask by the one that got injured, by the victim, that he should forgive him, but hanechbal tzarech sheyivakish olav rachmim. But nevertheless, the victim should beg for mercy for the one that caused the injury. Shenema vayispal Avram alalakim. As we see by Avram that he davened for Avimelech, meaning that it says that Avram davened even when Avimelech did not ever ask for forgiveness. Und der Pfarrer sagt Rashi, as dafke mikan lernt men op lemishem mevakshim mimenu mechila shelo yechzari milimcha. At this point, that when one asks for forgiveness, you should immediately forgive. That could only be learned from our parsha, what happens by Moshe, but not by Avram, where Avimelech never asked for forgiveness. And however, this is not a good answer for this question. Because this actually only strengthens the question. Why wouldn't we learn from what happens by Avram when he davens? As a fila on bakashas mechile, that even in a case where the one that caused the injury does not ask for forgiveness, still the victim should forgive. And we would understand that definitely if you're being asked for forgiveness. So it's still a better source, and actually you can learn from there, and you would understand how much more so that this applies in a case where you're being asked for forgiveness. Additionally, it's not possible to say, based on what was mentioned before, as from Vayispal Avram is bechlal muchach as meichel gewen. That maybe we would say that from this that it says that Avram davened for Avimelech, it doesn't actually prove that Avram ever forgave him. The Yitachen as gebeten rachme, because it's possible that he begged for mercy for Avimelech on the bakashas mechila von Avimelech, and Avimelech never asked him for forgiveness. On the mechila mitzidai, and Avram actually never forgave him, but he still davened for him. Al derech tfilasei al Sodom v'chulu, similar to what we find when Avram davens for the city of Sodom. And azevet neladen eichen dem pirish b'teisefta, and this is what the Teisefta means when it says that Avimelech never asked for forgiveness, and what follows is that Avram never forgave him, but he still davened for him. So this is not a good answer. Varom, because noisef auf dem deichik lefarish. In addition to the fact that it's difficult to say that Avram davened to Hashem that he should be healed if Avram did not forgive him for what he did. But if this point is true, that when it says that Avram davened, it doesn't prove that he forgave him, so then when it says in our parsha that Moshe davened, there's no proof that he forgave Yidden. Steht Punkt derselbe Loschen Vayispal Moshe wie bei Avram Vayispal Avram. In our parsha, it doesn't explicitly say that Moshe forgave Yidden. All it says that he davened for Yidden, just like by Avram. So therefore, we must say as from Vayispal is a haychache as is da gewend der Inyan Mechila. The word Vayispal, the fact that he davens on behalf of Yidden, means that he forgave them. Und b'meile kann man auch lernen from Vayispal Avram Punkt wie from Vayispal Moshe. So we can learn from the term that it says Vayispal Avram that Avram davens for Avimelech, just like by Moshe that he forgave Avimelech. So v'hadra kushi leduchte kanal. So the question is still in its place. Why does Rashi say mikan and not that we're learning it from Avimelech? Now it would seem that we could say as follows: as leit Rashi kemen it uplernen from Vayispal Avram, that according to Rashi, you cannot learn at this point from Avram that davened for Avimelech, weil dort hat sich nicht gefordert kein bakashas mechila mitzad Avimelech, because in that case it wasn't even necessary for Avimelech to ask for forgiveness. Ubemele nit kein mechila mitzad Avram, and therefore there was no forgiveness on Avram's behalf. Why is this? The taina von Avimelech is doch gewen. What was Avimelech's argument? Beton levavi asisi zeis. What I did when I took Sarah to become my wife, I did this completely sincerely. He was told that this is Avram's sister. Und der Rebbe hat es angenommen, and Hashem accepted this argument. Gam anoichi yedaiti ki betom levavcha asisi zois, Hashem says, I know that you've done this sincerely. Ve'echsech gam ani oischa michatayli, and I spared you from touching her and sinning. I didn't allow you to touch her. So v'hainu, as it not gemeint ton an avlot to Avram. He wasn't looking to do anything bad to Avram Avinu. Und der Fall ist da nicht scheich die Sache von Akashas Mechila und Mechila. There is no requesting forgiveness, and there is no forgiveness on behalf of Avram. And Azay is mashma from Pasuk b'divrei Hashem al Avimelech, and this is what it would seem from what it says in the Pasuk when Hashem speaks to Avimelech. V'ata hoshev eishes ish ki novihu v'yispal batcha v'choya. Return the wife to this man. He's a prophet, and he'll daven for you, and you'll live. Atav blois umker and saren. All he has to do is return Sarah to her husband, and that's enough. And he'll daven for you and you'll live. And Rashi is mefarish, and Rashi there explains, Hoshev Eishes return the wife. Don't think that maybe even after you return her, he'll still be upset. He'll still hate you, and he won't daven for you. He's a prophet, and he knows that you did not touch her. And therefore, as soon as you return his wife, he'll daven for you. So it would seem from all of this that Avimelech did something completely not knowing that he's taking away Avram's wife, and Hashem accepted this argument, and he said, all you have to do is return the wife, that's it. However, this is not a good explanation. From Pasuk, Vayikach Avimelech Tzayin Ubakar Vavod B'Mushvachas V'Yitin LaAvram Goyme. The pasuk later goes on to say that Avram took from Avimelech, that is, took from his cattle and his slaves and his maids, and he gave Avram a gift. Was the Ruv Zokt Rashi, and Rashi explains why did Avimelech do this? Kadeshi Yispayis v'Yispalel olav, in order that Avram should be appeased and he should daven for him. Is move on as the hat sich yagefodit bakoshes mechila mitzad Avram mitzad Avimelech. So we understand from this that it was necessary for Avimelech to ask for forgiveness. Und speises mitzad Avram, that Avram should accept and be appeased. Und kedumuchach euch von dem, was mir gefindt nicht, als Avram hat sich abgesagt zu annehmen Avimelechs Matane. And as it's clear from the fact that we don't find that Avimelech refused, Avram that is refused to accept the gift from Avimelech. He accepted it because it was something that he was to be appeased. He took that gift that Avimelech gave him in order to ask for forgiveness, and Avram accepted it. Und es ist moving with Pashtus, and it's actually simply understood was medarf bakoshas mechilo pius, why it is necessary for there to be an asking for forgiveness and to appease Avram Avinu. Wie bald das sof hat Avimelech heute gewen ubechet chomer beyose klapi Avram. Because in the end of the day, the fact is that what he did was a terrible sin against Avram. He took away his wife. Und kavanas Avimelech endet es nicht. His intentions, even if he had pure intentions, it doesn't change what he actually did. It's for this alone that he should ask for forgiveness. Mitzad Avimelech, on his spices mitzad Avram. Avimelech should be asking for forgiveness, and Avram accepts the gift and he's appeased. So if so, the original question still remains. Favos sollen it uplearnen from Vayispal Avram that Mikashlo Yachzorim Milimchol. Why can't we learn from this story with Avimelech and Avram davens on his behalf? And as we see, he did have to ask for forgiveness, and he gave him gifts in order to appease him. So Avram davens for him immediately. Why is this not the source that when one is being asked for forgiveness, he should immediately forgive? Das verstehen, so to understand this. Let's take first a closer look at the exact words of Rashi. Rashi says, that one should not be cruel and hold back forgiveness. In Tanchume is the Loshen Kanal. The Tanchume that was quoted before, it says a little bit of a different expression. That one that forgives is not being a cruel person. Or another version that it says there, that the one that forgives should not be cruel. Similar expressions. On al derech zeh in Mishnah, the same lashon that it says in Tanchume, it says in the Mishnah. Rashi is aber mishana. However, Rashi changes the expression and sagt nit shelo yehei amoichel achzari, that the one that forgives should not be cruel, nor shelo yehei achzari milimchel. He should not be cruel and hold back in his forgiveness. What is the difference between these two expressions? It sounds very similar, but there's a big difference. So what can be explained is as follows. As the Chiddush bezeh is nit azay in dem etzem mechila. The Chiddush here about the fact that one should be ready to forgive immediately is not just the readiness to forgive, just the forgiveness itself, not in dem oifen mechila. What we're learning here from Moshe Rabbeinu is the extent of the forgiving that Moshe Rabbeinu forgave Yidden. The explanation for this is Mechila can sein oif kama ifan. When one forgives, this could be to different extents. How much is the forgiveness? And three of those different ifanim are as follows. Aleph, eine is meichel, dem zweiten, dem chet, was is begangen kengenim. When you forgive someone for the sin, for the offense, or the injury that he caused you, bichdei, der zweite soll nicht nanisch werden. In order that you want to spare this person from any punishment, any consequence that he would get as a result of the fact that he hurt you. Beis, another level of forgiving, you're forgiving someone not only because you want to protect him from any consequence for the chet, the aveda that he did here, and he caused you pain. You're not holding any grudge against the person that caused you this harm and this suffering. Gimel, an even greater extent and a greater level of forgiveness, says Amechile belev shalim, when one forgives with a complete and full heart. Va'ofen, as is in ganzen Nespais geworden, he's completely appeased. The Nimchel is merutze v'chavuv lefanav k'koydem achet. The one that is forgiving is completely forgiven, and they are in a good relationship and complete good terms, exactly the way it was before this incident happened. That's the highest level of forgiving, with a belev shalom, with a full heart. To explain this in a different from a different approach. And the Mashta Neifin is a Moichel Yanem Schet. The first level of forgiving is when the one that's forgiving is focusing on the actual sin that happened, or the actual offense that happened, that hurts the person that's forgiving, and you're forgiving him, and you want to forgive him for that actual offense. And then zweiten Neufen is a Meichel the Menschen, was hat sich versindigt. It's a greater level of forgiving, where you're forgiving the person that caused this chet, that caused this harm and suffering. So you're forgiving him as a person. And the dritte Neufen, and then on the third level of forgiving, where the person is ready to forgive to the level that it completely uproots the whole entire incident, the whole entire existence of the Saveda. So bleibt nicht kein Reischen Klau. There's no mark left from the entire incident. They're back in good terms, exactly the way they are before. Und dann aftemine bepoil zwischen sie is, the difference between these three levels of forgiving is as follows. B'shas, that is eisen blois as jenes ondet nenish werden zu lieb dem begangenem chet. If when one is forgiving, the only thing that he's concerned about is that he doesn't want this person to suffer and to be punished for what he did to him. Is b'michilasa sich mishtadel nor wie viel das is negei dem einish auf den zweiten durch dem chet prati. So in the forgiving, the extent of the forgiving is that I forgive this individual thing that you did to hurt me, in order that there should be no consequence, that you should suffer any punishment as a result. But on the second level, or even more so on the third level, when one forgives with a full heart, is the negei the teuve von dem zweiten. Here, the one that forgives is interested in the well-being of this person. Is the michile ba'ofen as a legt sich in the marayim b'yesasei. So here you forgive and you invest yourself in this fully. Bis zu peil sein, as the zweite soll sein or werden in ganzen kedaboi. To be sure that this person that did something like this and is on such a level that he was able to hurt you, to forgive him and to bring out the best in him. That the whole thing, the whole incident should be completely removed and should be exactly as it was before. Biz as begangen the avle klapiem. It should be like it was before he did this bad thing to him, like before this sin. So those are the two or three different levels of the extent of one's forgiving when someone offended him, or hurt him, or anything. Das ist der Chiluk zwischen Vayispal Avram, the Mechila von Avram, und the Mechila Sheba Parsha Seinu. So this explains the difference between Avram's forgiving, when Avram davened for Avimelech, and the Mechila of Moshe Rabbeinu in this week's Parsha. By Avram steht, Vayispal Avram el Elikim, Vayirpa Elikim es Avimelech goime Vayalodu. Avram davens, and Hashem heals Avimelech and the people in his house, and they can give birth. The Tfilah Bakashas Avram is given b'negei refuasa shel Avimelech. This is what Avram davened for. That although Avimelech did something that caused him suffering, but Avimelech should not suffer as a result. As the Zalat abgenommen werden, the Einish was es gekommen auf Avimelech und Bnei Beisai. That the illness and the suffering of Avimelech and the people in his house should be removed. That was the extent of the forgiveness, the first level of forgiveness. The Parsha Seinu steht, however, in this week's Parsha it says, Nit nor stam vayispal Moshe Hashem. It doesn't just simply say that Moshe davened to Hashem vi b'tfilas Avram. Vayispal Avram el Elikim. Like by Avram it says that Avram davens to Hashem. Now the pasuk is Moisif umadgish. The pasuk adds and emphasizes Vayispal Moshe ba'ad ha'am. Moshe davens on behalf of the people. Now those are extra words in the pasuk. It's obvious that he's davening for the Yidden. What is the pasuk emphasizing by this? Im is given a geya the matzah from the Am. When Moshe davens for the Yidden, he's not just davening to remove the consequence for this particular offense that they did here, but he is interested in the well-being of the Yidden. And is given eisen nid blois as al bottle werden dem einish von the nechashim chulu. Moshe Rabbeinu here is davening and is interested not only in removing this punishment of the snakes, nor as al nistaken werden dem matzah from dem Am. Rather, he wants to correct the entire incident. He wants to bring back the condition of the Yidden that they should be accepted by Hashem like before the Aveda. On the fact the pasuk mamshich, and therefore the pasuk continues and says, as if them is gekommen the Empfer from the Meibishin asele chasarav. So the answer to Hashem is, if what you're looking for is not just to remove the consequence, but to heal the Yidden on a deeper level and to elevate them to the level that they were before, so for this, asele chasarav, you have to make this snake that's placed on a pole that will cause Yidden to come to that proper level. So this is not being said here as a condition to minimize the level of Moshe's davening. On the contrary, this is an indication that Moshe Rabbeinu davens for the Yidden for something even deeper, a deeper level of forgiveness. And when it says aseh lecha means like pshutisha mikra meint mishalcha. This means that Moshe Rabbeinu has to make this snake for them, this copper snake, that it should be his. That he's the one that's spending his money for this. Al derech v'Rashi taich by aseh lecha shtei chatzotzes kesef. As Rashi clearly says, by aseh lecha that Moshe Rabbeinu prepares the trumpets, that it's him. Moshe Rabbeinu with his money is making these trumpets. But now the question here is, does this negate Yidden? Since this is something that is relevant, or this is for the Yidden's sake. Was dibru b'Hashem u'b'Moshe. They're the ones that spoke out against Hashem and Moshe. As the Sodov soll sein, dafke mishalehem, mishal tzibur. Wouldn't it be more appropriate that the Yidden, the ones that sinned, they should be the ones to prepare this copper snake to save them? So no, the myth that the Rebbe angewiesen Moshe, and so with this Hashem is showing Moshe as a zoltan and an oifen l'cha mishalcha. That what he should do here is, if he's asking for this level of forgiveness, that Yidden should be completely forgiven, so what he should do is that it should be l'cha mishalcha, as zol zayin niker, as im negeya dizach. That Moshe Rabbeinu should actually forgive them fully and express this idea that this is something that matters to him. Was beweist, dass is in them mitzidam. That Moshe Rabbeinu is getting involved in this for their sake, to save them not only from the punishment, but actually on behalf of the well-being of the Yidden, to elevate them to the level that they were on before they sinned. And as we see from what the pasuk and Rashi says, this was the whole point of making this copper snake. It wasn't just simply in order to heal Yidden, not if ma'ire sein Yidden, as es soll sein Yisrael, mistaklen klapi maila, mishabdim es libam lavim shebashamayim, to inspire Yidden to do tshuva and to look up to heaven and to subjugate themselves to their Father in heaven. That they should do tshuva not only regarding what the words that they said and whatever is related to this, but a deep tshuva, a tshuva that comes from the heart to give over their heart to Hashem. But the Father is given the tzivui, and therefore the pasuk says that what should be done is v'simoisi al nes. This copper snake is placed on a pole. A person that's bitten by a snake, v'hibit on the chashan achoshis v'choy. He has to look intently and pay attention to this copper snake looking up to heaven. As Rashi explains, what's the point with this copper snake? Und das ist der Tam, for was die Refuhe ist nicht gekommen gleich nach Tfilas Moshe wie bei Vayspal Avram Elokim und gleich bei Yerpol Ekimus Avimelech Gomer. This explains why here the healing for Yidden wasn't immediate, as it was in the case by Avram when Avram davens for Avimelech. Nor durch Vayas Moshe Gomer Vayisemeo Anes Gomer vehibit, that Moshe Rabbeinu made his copper snake and he placed it on the pole and the Yidden looked up towards heaven. But the Kavane is not no heder einish, because in Moshe Rabbeinu's case here, when he's forgiving Yidden, the point was not just to prevent or spare them from any punishment, but rather he wanted to forgive them on a much deeper level, to inspire them and elevate them to a level of tshuva, in order for them to subjugate their hearts to their Father in heaven. So this is the higher level of mechila that Moshe Rabbeinu forgave Yidden. The second, or even the third category of tshuva that the Rebbe mentioned before, a mechila with a full heart that brings Yidden to a high level of tshuva. Now we come back to what Rashi says. Und das ist der Dik Lashon Rashi. So with this we can understand the exact words that Rashi says here, different than what it says in the Tanchum and in the Mishnah. That mikan, from here we learn that he should not be cruel, holding back in his forgiveness. Nit shalei yehei ha'moichel achzari. Stam. Rashi doesn't say the expression that it says in the Tanchum and Mishnah that one that forgives should not be cruel. What's the difference between these two expressions? When it says that he should forgive and not be cruel, it's speaking about the person, that he has a choice either to be cruel or to forgive. As that he should not be cruel. The Hainu, which means b'shas man is nit meichel dem zweiten und zu dem bekommt anoinisch is das an achzarius. That if you're not forgiving this individual, and as a result he's going to be punished by this, so that's cruelty. Und das as der meichel soll nicht sein kein achzari, weiß man takke from vayspal Avram. So this point, this basic requirement of forgiveness, that one should forgive at least to spare the one that hurt him from any consequence, from any punishment, that we can see by Avram. That Avram davened to remove the suffering of Avimelech. However, here there's a new point that we learn in this week's parsha, a greater level of forgiving. Here we learn that one should not be cruel, holding back in his forgiveness. What does this mean? This expression that Rashi says is not speaking about the person in general, that he has a choice to either forgive or to be cruel and not forgive. As the moichel soll nicht sein kein achzari, ubemele is there a moichel, that the one that's forgiving is not cruel and he's actually forgiving. Because if you will not forgive him, so then the cruelty here is that now this person will suffer, he'll be punished. No, rather, in the expression of Rashi, what you see is Rashi is explaining regarding the actual forgiving itself, as in dem inyan mechile lo yehei achzari mi limcha. This is a description in the extent of the forgiving. That when you are forgiving, don't forgive in a way that you're holding back. Forgive fully. Otherwise, there's some level of cruelty involved in the forgiveness. As the mechile gufe soll nicht sein beoifen as achzari. That the forgiving itself, he is forgiving already. But the forgiving itself should be to the extent that there should be no level of cruelty in the forgiveness. That's the term lo yehei achzari mi limchol. Rashi is describing the extent of the limchol, the forgiveness, not to hold back anything in the forgiveness. Then the mechile is not to libar opnam de meinish, when one forgives, just with the intention, in order to remove any punishment, any consequence from this person, is this nitken emes mechila. That's not a genuine forgiveness. It says an achzari is the mechila. It's a forgiveness, but a cruel forgiveness. Why? Because that means that the one that forgives still has a grudge. You still are upset at the person that you're forgiving. You're forgiving begrudgingly and externally, or to some extent, in order that he shouldn't suffer. So that's a forgiveness with cruelty. But when one forgives with a full heart, that's a forgiveness which is pure and has no remnant of any cruelty in the forgiveness. That's the meaning of Rashi's words, that from Moshe Rabbeinu, the way he forgave Yidden, with a full heart, and Hashem tells him that you're going to bring them to this level of tshuva, that they should be forgiven completely like before the chet. This is what we learn, that when one is asked for forgiveness, he shouldn't just forgive immediately and externally to prevent from this person any consequence, but he should forgive immediately with a full heart, like on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now here the Rebbe comes back to the other version that we had, that is in Rashi, quoted in the beginning of the Sikha. Nachmer is das glatik leite gerse achzari limchel. This pshat in Rashi actually now fits better with the version in Rashi, which is in most sources of this Rashi, that one should not be cruel to forgive. Achzari in their mechila, not to be cruel in their forgiveness. So simply reading this version of Rashi is difficult to understand. Cruelty in forgiveness, cruelty holding back to forgive, mi limcha, would make sense. But as the Rebbe is explaining here, yes, we're talking about one is forgiving. However, there should be no remnant of cruelty in the forgiveness, but rather it should be belev shalim, with a full heart. Now, leidem gerse is eich muvan, according to this version that we see, it's understood, wie ze kommt der meite pirish Rashi ender in sumi limcha. How did it happen that the one that wrote down the Rashi that he saw would change from the original version of the way Rashi wrote it, where it said achzari limchel, and he switched it to mi limchel? Well, hat nicht verstanden. because he didn't understand what this means. Wie kann sein zusammen achzari und limcha? How do these two go together? That he's cruel and he's forgiving. Hat zurückgeschrieben am mem. So he added the letter mem, mi limcha, that he should not be cruel and hold back forgiveness. But, so therefore it makes sense to say that was the original version, limcha. And then someone came and added that mem there. But if you would say that the opposite is true, if Rashi originally did write mi limcha with that mem, don't be cruel and hold back forgiveness, who would come and change that and make a mistake and take out the mem and write the word limcha? So therefore, it's more logical to say that the correct version of the Rashi is one should not be cruel in forgiveness, meaning that the forgiveness should be with a full heart. Now, as an example for this, and similar to this idea, when one forgives, but there's still cruelty in this forgiveness, if one gives tzedakah, and he's giving tzedakah to a poor individual that's needy, but not with a happy face, not with a generosity, but he's giving it, even if he's actually giving generously, but he's giving with a bad attitude. So there, regarding this, the Rambam says, she'ibid zechusay, the one that gives tzedakah loses his entire merit of the tzedakah. Even if he gives tzedakah 1,000 gold coins, but if it's being given with a bad attitude and with a bad feeling, so then it's not really the mitzvah of tzedakah properly. So similar over here regarding the mechila, that there should be no achzarius in the mechila, but it should be belev shalom, and that we learn specifically from Moshe Rabbeinu. So this concludes the explanation for the pshat and the Rashi. Now, based on all of this, the Rebbe continues to explain the Rambam that quotes this in halacha as well, and the Rambam brings this a few times. Based on everything that we learned, we could also explain the differences in the language of the Rambam regarding this subject, as the that one should not be cruel and he should forgive. And the Rambam quotes this at least 3 times. In Hilchas Deis, the first time in Hilchas Deis, the Rambam writes, "K'sheyechta ish le'ish," when one offends his friend, lo yistamena v'yishtek chulu, so the victim should not hate him and be quiet about it. Ela mitzvah of leidia chulu, the victim should notify what it is that he's hurting about. And then the Rambam says, "V'im chazar ubikish mimeno limcholei." If the one that offended and hurt him comes and asks again for forgiveness, tzarich limchol, he must forgive him. And the one that forgives should not be cruel about this, as it says, and the Rambam brings a pasuk by Avram. In Hilchas Shuvah, again the Rambam quotes this idea in Hilchas Shuvah. Oster la'adam liyas achzari v'lo yispayis. It's forbidden for a person to be cruel and not to be appeased. It should be easy to forgive, and it should be hard to get him angry. And when the one that sinned against him asks for forgiveness, he should forgive with a full heart and with a full desire. Now, the third time in Hilchas Chayvul Mazik, the Rambam writes, it's forbidden for the one that was injured, or the one that was caused harm, to be cruel and not to forgive. This is not the way, this is not the behavior of the Jewish nation. As soon as the one that caused the injury asks for forgiveness, and he begs him once and twice, and the victim now knows that he regrets from what he did, and he regrets the bad that he caused him, he should forgive him. And the one that forgives quickly, he's praiseworthy, and the Chachamim look at this person very favorably. These are the 3 times that the Rambam brings this in halacha. So davon verstehen, the question here is, dem Tam von die Shinui halishonis v'haprotim in die 3 Yerta. Taking a look at each time the Rambam quotes this concept, there's differences in the language and the details, the way the Rambam says it. Aleph and Hilchas Deis state, the first point is, in Hilchas Deis the Rambam says, V'im chazer ubikish mimenu limcholoi, that if he comes and asks for forgiveness again, tzarich limchol, you should forgive him. V'lo yehei amoichel achzari chulu. And the one that forgives should forgive and not be cruel. Mashenken and Hilchas Shuva and on Hilchas Chayvel Amazik. But both in Hilchas Shuva and in Hilchas Chayvel Amazik, wird es gesagt b'lashon Oster. Here the Rambam uses a stronger term. Here he says that it's forbidden. Oster la'adam liyas achzari. In Hilchas Shuva he says it's forbidden for a person to be cruel. And in Hilchas Chayvel Amazik he says Oster la'nechbal liyas achzari. The victim that was injured, he should not be cruel. Beis, the second point, in the language of the Rambam, in Hilchas Chayvel Amazik read the Rambam arom di pratim wie zoyer zal moichel sein. Here the Rambam speaks more in detail how one should forgive. When he sees that the one that caused the injury is begging him for forgiveness once and twice, and you see that he really regrets what he did, then you should forgive him. But in Hilchas Shuva and similarly in Hilchas Deis, he doesn't bring these conditions and these details regarding the one that is forgiving. That he should forgive after being asked for forgiveness twice. The Rambam does say something similar in the halacha before, and that's in Hilchas Shuva, regarding the one that should ask for forgiveness. That if your friend does not want to forgive, so then maybe you should make every effort that he should forgive you. Bring people, 3 rows of people that should come with you to asking for forgiveness. Then if he still doesn't forgive, so a second time and a third time. So this, the Rambam brings regarding the one that's asking for forgiveness, but he doesn't bring the details mentioned in Hilchas Chayvel Amazik regarding the one that has to forgive. Und sagt da andere Praten. And over here in Hilchas Shuva, the Rambam also elaborates, but on other details. That he should be easy to forgive and hard to become angry. And when he's being asked to forgive, you should forgive with a full heart and with a full desire. And even if you caused him tremendous damage or a lot of pain, many times, you should not take revenge or bear a grudge. This is the way Yidden behave and their pure heart that they have. So we see here that there's a different emphasis, a different focus in what the Rambam says in Hilchas Chayvel Amazik and what he says in Hilchas Shuva. Gimel, the third point, the diyukei alashainis. There's also certain details in the language that are different. In Hilchas Deis, Oster v'lo yehei hamoichel achzari. In Hilchas Deis, the Rambam refers to the one that's forgiving as the moichel, the one that forgives. In Hilchas Shuva, Asur la'adam liyas achzari. In Hilchas Shuva, the Rambam says this person, man, should not be cruel. In Hilchas Chayvel Amazik, v'asur la'nechbal liyas achzari. In Chayvel Amazik, the Rambam says the one that was injured should not be cruel. Dalid, and the final point in the difference of the language here, also another thing to be pointed out in the continuation of the Rambam's expression. In Hilchas Shuva, the Rambam says, it's forbidden for a person to be cruel and he would not be appeased. So here the Rambam uses this term of being appeased. And Hilchas Chayvel Amazik, it's forbidden for one to be cruel and not to forgive. On Hilchas Deis, in Hilchas Deis, the Rambam doesn't add this line or anything to this. All the Rambam says is that that he should not, the one that forgives should not be cruel. So again, so as we see here, there's 3 times that the Rambam brings this halacha about forgiving. Hilchas Deis, Hilchas Shuva, and Hilchas Chayvel Amazik. And each time, the Rambam use a different language and a different focus regarding this halacha. Based on what was explained before, that there are different categories and different levels of forgiving, we could also understand how these 3 places where the Rambam quotes this, these are 3 different points about this inyan of forgiving someone. In the need to forgive, there are 3 different points and 3 different categories. Aleph, number 1, in Hilchas Chayvel Amazik, read the Rambam, dem geder in Mechile visizadin in Chayvel Amazik. So since this is Hilchas Chayvel Amazik, the Rambam speaks about forgiving as a halacha that is defined by this halacha of one that causes harm or damage. verbunden mit der Chabala v'hesek. And therefore, this is the forgiveness that's necessary for this specific harm, injury, or damage that happened. Kedeh soll niskape werden die Aveda von dem zweiten Jiden. In order that this Aveda that happened here, this specific injury, should be forgiven. Und wird durch den befreit werden von dem Meinisch. And that will free up the one that caused this damage or injury from any consequence, from any punishment. That's what the Rambam is focusing on in Hilchos Chayv L'Mazik. Basically, the first level of Mechila that the Rebbe spoke about before, to remove any negative result that would be from this specific offense or injury or damage that this person caused. Beis. Now, the second point of Mechila is in Hilchos Shuvah. Ret the Rambam wegen dem Geder in Mechila here in Hilchos Shuvah, the Rambam speaks about this concept of Mechila, this is negeya nit azoitzen chet v'oinish prati. Not the relevance of this as it relates to this specific aveda, this specific injury that happened. Nor to the tshuva from dem Adam HaChayta. Rather, how this Mechila is relevant and helps the full tshuva of the one that sinned. In order that the one that does tshuva, that his tshuva should be to its fullest extent, it's necessary to have this mechila. And that is that durch dem was the meichel, is dem zweiten meichel be mechila gemura. Through the fact that the victim forgives this individual with a full heart, a complete mechila, that the zweite, al yedei tshuva shaloi, so then this individual, by his tshuva, zayin merutze v'chaviv k'koydem achet, he then becomes accepted and beloved like before he sinned. Naki v'rotzi legamri, completely clean and accepted like before he sinned. That's what the Rambam is focusing on in Hilchos Shuvah, which is the second or third category that the Rebbe spoke before about the inyan of tshuva, when it's, or mechila that is, the forgiveness, when one forgives with a full heart, for the sake of the well-being of this person. You want to actually elevate him and help him return to that place that he was on before he sinned. Gimel, that's the third point here, in Hilchos Deis, Ret the Rambam, this is a praten Deis. Here in Hilchos Deis, the Rambam speaks about this as a detail in Hilchos Deis, which is midas shel Adam, a person's character, person's behavior. The Mechila, this is negeya to the midas from dem Adam hamoichel atzmai. Over here, the Rambam is speaking about the being meichel, forgiving, as this is important for the one that's actually forgiving himself, as far as what is considered to be the most appropriate behavior and a positive and a good character. Not the result of your mechila that it will cause for the one that caused you this injury, how it will affect him, but as far as for the meichel himself, as will be explained here. So the Rabbi continues to explain first Hilchos Deis and then works back to Hilchos Chayv L'Mazik and Hilchos Shuvah. So first regarding Hilchos Deis. Was das ist, was der Rambam fängt an in Hilchos Deis, in the Halacha, in Hilchos Deis. The Rambam begins in the Halacha of Hilchos Deis, and we can see that Rambam is focusing on the victim himself, that what is his proper reaction and behavior when someone hurt him and so on. K'sheyechte ish le'ish, when one man sins and offends another. So the victim should not just keep it in and just have hatred in his heart towards his friend. It's a mitzvah to notify him that I'm hurting for what you did to me. Now, so this that it says that he should not hate him. The mitzvah that he should notify him. What does this mean that it's a mitzvah? What's the mitzvah that you should notify him? The point there is not so much for the benefit of the one that did this aveda and caused you harm. This is actually explaining what is the right and positive character and the proper reaction of this person that suffered. So the proper reaction is that he should not hold any hatred in his heart. The proper behavior is that he should notify him that this is what I'm hurting and this is what you did to me, and then he will ask him for forgiveness. So as we see, the Rambam begins here, this is Hilchos Deis. So he's focusing on the proper behavior and the proper character of the person that got offended. And then based on this, we can see the continuation of what the Rambam says. If he comes and asks for forgiveness, again, he should forgive him and he should not be cruel. Here the Rambam does not mention that it's forbidden not to forgive, Oder as soll Michael sein noch bakoshes mechila beis a gimel pomim. And he doesn't also mention that he should only forgive only after 2 or 3 times that he asked for forgiveness. Weil da redt der Rambam beikir wegen dem Teuve v'teyeles for dem Michael. V'deis shalai. The point that the Rambam is focusing on is what's the benefits of forgiving someone for the person himself that's actually forgiving. That this is actually the proper reaction and good behavior on his behalf. If the main point here would be for the one that actually did the Aveda against him, so here it's relevant that wait maybe after 2 or 3 times to make sure that this person is sincere and he really regrets what he did. That's for his benefit. But here the Rambam though is focusing on the character of the one that's forgiving. Mitzadeis umidas hamoichel, because of the proper character of the one that forgives, is imchazar ubikish mimenu limchaloi tzarech limchaloi v'lo yehei hamoichel achzari. He should forgive and he should not be cruel. As gleich wenn betem dem erste Mal sollen it haben ken achzari is belibay umoichel sein. As soon as he's asked for forgiveness the first time, he should not be cruel and he should forgive him. That's what the Rambam is focusing on in Hilchos Deis. So he's not speaking about the Isser, that is something that's forbidden. That would be relevant if holding back forgiveness can cause harm to the one that you're holding your forgiveness from him. But here the Rambam is talking about the good character for this person himself that's actually forgiving. By contrast, when you learn the Rambam in Hilchos Chayvul HaMazik, what's the Rambam focusing on here? Dort redt der Rambam wegen dem Eufen, the Gede in the Mechile, was is negayet in dem Kaparas HaChayvul, auf dem Chet. Here the Rambam talks about the forgiving that is important and is necessary to forgive on this offense and on this injury that this person, that the Chayvul, the one that did this, caused this. Und wie sagt dort, in dem friedigen Halacha, as the Rambam clearly is focusing on this in the previous Halacha, ein miskapelei, that this individual that caused this harm will not be forgiven, and his sin will not be forgiven for, until he asks for forgiveness by the victim, and then it will be forgiven. Und der Vater ist dann geya, and therefore, since over here the point is that this person that caused this damage or harm, that he should have a full mechila. So therefore, what's relevant here is that kivin shebikish mimenu achayvul v'nischanan loy pam rishayna v'shniya. Only after he sees that he begs for forgiveness once and twice, and v'yeda shu shav michetay, and it's clear that he's doing tshuva, and v'nicham al ra'asay, and he regrets the bad that he did, then yimchalay, then he should forgive him. As dafke when azet durch yanim sishtadlos v'hachno, as shav michetay v'nicham al ra'asay, only when the victim sees that the effort that he's making and the fact that he's subduing himself by doing this, then he should forgive him. Damult is massen, soll moichel sein, bichdei soll jenem niskape werden, dem chet, and soll nicht nerisch werden von dem. Then he should be moichel him in order to forgive for the sin that he did, and he will not be punished for this. That's the focus of the Rambam in Hilchos Chayvul HaMazik. So again, the point there is in Hilchos Deis, the Rambam is focusing on the benefits of being moichel for this individual himself, that's being moichel. And Hilchos Chayvul HaMazik, the Rambam is focusing on the Chabala, the hezek that happened, this actual injury or damage that happened here, in order to remove the negative results that would come as a consequence. So the one that caused this, so the one that's being moichel should be moichelim after the first or second time, and then he sees that it really regrets this, it will remove this Aveda, this specific Aveda here, and therefore he will not suffer any consequence. That's Hilchos Chayvul HaMazik. In Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam, however, now in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam speaks about a much greater level of Mechila, similar to the level of Mechila by Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rambam wegen Mechila was es negayet zum Klolus v'shleimus hatshuva von dem Chayvul v'chula. Here the Rambam speaks not only about forgiving in order to remove the negative result of this Aveda, the punishment or consequence that could happen, but Mechila in the broader sense to help this person do tshuva to the fullest degree. Was wegen dem sagt in dem friedigen Halacha, as we see from what the Rambam says in the Halacha before, that not tshuva, that tshuva or even Yom Kippur will not atone for the person, ela chulu, only on the Averis between man and Hashem. Aval Averis should be an adam lachavere. But when it comes to Averis where a person offended his fellow, another person, if you injured another person, if you stole from him, or anything similar, then this will not be forgiven forever, until you return what you owe him, and you also ask for forgiveness, because even after you return the money to him, it's still necessary for the full tshuva to go and ask for forgiveness, and when he forgives you, that's when you have the complete tshuva. That's what the Rambam is focusing on here. The far is mamshech, and therefore the Rambam continues and says, "As Oster la'odam liyis achzari v'lo yispayis el yehei noyach l'ratzis chulu." That is forbidden for one to be cruel and not to be appeased, but it should be easy to appease and to forgive. Hagam as l'chayre is das gar shaykh to the halachas from Midas V'deis. This continuation that the Rambam says here in Hilchas Shuvah seems out of place. This is something that belongs in Hilchas Days, where the Rambam already brought this point. What's the reaction of a person? What's the positive character trait that a Yid should forgive? Why is he bringing this here? Because here the Rambam is speaking about the extent of a mechila when a person forgives with a full heart and with a full desire. This is something which is relevant not only for the character of the one that's being meichel, but also for the full tshuva, for the full extent of the tshuva for the one that did this aveda here. Das heißt, in other words, as the mechila darf sein nit bloß zu lieb asaras ha'einish van chet proti. The mechila here is not only in order to remove the result, the consequence that comes from this individual aveda that he did. That's what the Rambam focuses on in Hilchas Chayvul Amazik. Not a mechila shleima. Rather, there should be a full forgiveness, biz azavet merutze v'chaviv lefanav, and to the point that this person becomes completely appeased and he's beloved in front of him, like before the avera he did. Und der Rebbe is done dodi ad gashav bakashas hamechila gimel pamim. So therefore, here the Rambam does not bring this point about asking for forgiveness 3 times. The point that the Rambam focuses on over here is that when the one that sinned asks for forgiveness, he should be meichel with a full heart and with a full desire. So what this implies is that not only is he for forgiving him, for this individual aveda preventing any consequence, nor as in ganzen merutze lefonav. He forgives him with a full heart. He's completely appeased. That's what the Rambam here uses this term of being appeased, as the Rabbi will explain soon, in order to show that we're talking here about a much deeper level of mechila that helps this person in his tshuva. That's what the Rambam is focusing on over here. Okay, and the Rambam here actually uses regarding this the lashon of Oster, meaning that one should not hold back this tshuva from this individual. It's just this ability to do tshuva on this level. Und das ist echt der Tam von die andere Shinui alle Sheines. This also explains the other differences in the language of the Rambam that was pointed out before. In Hilchas Chayvul Amazik sagt Oster lenechbal liyesachzari v'lo yimchale, that it's forbidden for the one that was injured and suffered to be cruel and not to forgive. So the Rambam is focusing on the specific aveda that happened, meaning that he suffered in this injury. And he's only uses the term mechila. On Hilchas Shuvah, Oster la'odam liyesachzari v'lo yispayis. It's forbidden for man to be cruel and not to be appeased. What does this mean? In Hilchas Chayvul Amazik fordert sich be'ike der inyan mechila. In Hilchas Chayvul Amazik, the Rambam is speaking about the first and basic level of forgiving. So all that's required is to forgive, was is verbunden mit the peulas hachabale b'chdei l'salek ha'einish. To forgive for what happened there in this specific injury, in order to remove any consequence from this person. The far is the lashon also lenechbal. The Rambam focuses on the person of what he suffered, the injury, and yimchale, the basic level of forgiveness. And Hilchas Shuvah is ein meichel sein kanal, but in Hilchas Shuvah though here the forgiving, as explained, is nit mugbal zu misalik sein blois dem einish for the pegia. Here the forgiving is not limited just to remove any consequence for what he suffered. Tzidur chabala, whether this is he suffered because of an injury, that he injured him, or mekalal, he cursed him, and geisel, or the hiknit, or he stole from him, or in any other way offended him, wie the Rambam rechen dort frier, as the Rambam brings there earlier. Not even more than this. Als Adam, als a Yid, was is eisen, toivasa shal chavera, but as a person, and as a Yid, that is interested in the well-being of his friend, he should be not only forgiven but appeased. Not only to be ready to forgive, to hold back or to prevent any consequence from this individual, but to be completely appeased. But also to help this person to come to a complete and ultimate level of tshuva. That's why here the Rambam talks about the Adam, that one Yid is interested in the well-being of another, and therefore he's ready to forgive him with a full heart and to be fully appeased even after this person hurt him, offended him, or damaged him. So that's the difference in the language between Hilchas Chayvel Mazik and Hilchas Tshuva. Now, based on this, Valpizeh, Yesh Lataretz, the Stire V'Kushye in Divrei Rambam, wie der Lechem Mishnah fragt. We can now answer a contradiction and a question that the Lechem Mishnah asks in the words of the Rambam. In Hilchas Chayvel Mazik sagt der Rambam, in Hilchas Chayvel Mazik the Rambam says, Shahamazik mamain chaveiroi, if you damaged your person's property or any of his possessions, Kivin sheshilam mashu chayev lo, as soon as you pay and reimburse him, niskapeloi, you're forgiven. On a daf bayanim nidbeten kemechila. You don't have to ask for forgiveness additionally. In other words, this that you have to ask for forgiveness, according to what the Rambam says in Hilchas Chayvel Mazik, it would seem, is only when you injure the person and his body, but not when you cause a damage to any of his property or possessions. On Hilchas Tshuva, Rachen der Rambam zwischen der Aveire sheberaden lachaveire. However, in Hilchas Tshuva, when the Rambam counts different instances when one sins towards his fellow man, that was einay nimcha loy at sheyitn lachaveire mashu chayev loy v'yiratzeu, that you will not be forgiven until you return, you reimburse your friend. And the Rambam adds, and you should ask for forgiveness. So the Rambam also includes oy geizloi, the chayetzeben, that this includes also if you steal from someone, or kayetzeben, which means any money damage. So there's a clear contradiction here regarding this case of a money damage. Is it necessary to ask for forgiveness as well to be that there should be completely a kapara for this offense or for this aveda? So the answer is varom by the sug kapara sachet farmazik zayin blois mamech avedai. When it comes to this kind of aveda, when all he did was he did not harm him, injure him, but he damaged him. He damaged his money. He damaged his possessions. That the Rambam speaks about in Hilchas Chayvel Mazik is nit neitik ken bakashas mechila. It's not necessary for any forgiveness. In order to remove any negative consequence for the one that caused this damage, over here it's just enough to reimburse him monetarily, and that's it. He will not suffer any consequence. When he injures him on his body, here it's necessary to not only pay and reimburse whatever loss he causes him, but also to ask for forgiveness. That's in Hilchas Chayvel Mazik. However, here in Hilchas Tshuva, legabe shleimus ritzei adam, in Hilchas Tshuva, where the Rambam is focusing on the person being fully appeased and the mechila that comes with a full heart, vidas retzach in Hilchas Tshuva is yeshleima, as if then fadet zich leratzaisai v'lishol mimenu sheyimchaloi. So here it is necessary to ask for forgiveness. Even if one damaged his friend's money, property in any way, even if it's not necessary to ask for mechila in order to spare yourself from any consequence, but nevertheless, in order to be, again, completely on good terms with a full mechila b'leiv shalem, there is the point of asking mechila, even when one just damaged his friend's property or monies. And that's what the Rambam is focusing on in Hilchas Tshuva. Says Doch Magid Dvorav LeYaakov Chukov uMishpatav LeYisrael. As we know, learning from this pasuk where it says Dvorav, that Hashem says His words, His mitzvahs, He gives to Yidden, that Geshem Vidas has been Benegeya to Yidden, that just as this is true regarding Yidden, as Darkam Shazera Yisrael v'Libe Manochem, is to Meichen sein, Belev Shalom v'Nefesh Chafetza, that Yidden have it in their character to forgive with a full heart and with a full desire, und Meichel sein miyad, and to forgive immediately. Biz as euch legabe de mechila oifen chet parati, feirtais der Rambam and Hilchas Chayvel Mazik, and even if a person is only forgiving for this individual offense that happened here, the Rambam says in Hilchas Chayvel Mazik that v'cholam amar limcha, one that forgives immediately or quicker. He's praiseworthy, and Chachamim are very happy with this individual. So this is the way it is in the character and the behavior that's demanded of a Yid. So from the pasuk Magid Dvarov, we learn that Hashem gives Yidden the mitzvahs that He Himself fulfills. And therefore, as Dr. Von verstandig, so it's understood that Al Achas Kama V'Kama B'Midas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Most definitely, this is the case with Hashem's character. Was the Mechila Hu Hi Midas Harachamim U'Midas V'Akdoshos Einem B'Chinas Gvul V'Tachlis. When Hashem forgives, this is His attribute of compassion, and Hashem's holy attributes. The midas of Hashem are endless, are infinite. Hashem forgives again and again without any limit. As there is Memayir Limchel, Hashem forgives immediately, Eden of alle Dvarim Bilti Ritzuim, for all negative things, U'Ba'ofen Sholchein, V'Chesed, V'Rachmim, B'Toiv, V'Nir, V'Nigla, and Hashem forgives with grace, with kindness, and with compassion, with an open and revealed good. Was das Gufe is Mo'erir and help the Yidden. This itself inspires Yidden and assists them as Yisrael, Oisen Shuve Miyad, that Yidden will do Shuve immediately. And then as a result, they will immediately be redeemed, with the ultimate redemption.